Good morning to all of you, uh, and thanks to the organizers of this conference. What I am going to speak on is what we call an island-mainland transition identified by Euler number. What we mean by saying island-mainland transition. Suppose we have a very rough landscape like this with hills and lakes and ocean, and if the water level rises up a lot, then after some time we expect to see something like this. Only the hills will be above the level of the water. So we shall have isolated islands in a fully connected sea. And now suppose the water goes down, the water level goes down, then we have something like this, mixed phase, we call it mixed phase. And if it goes down still further, then at one point, the land will get connected fully. This is white is the land, and only the deepest portions, that is the lakes, will be isolated and scattered in the mainland. So we have a transition from this phase with islands in connected sea to a mixed phase to lakes scattered in a connected mainland. And how can we characterize this transition? So what we do here, we are looking at a square lattice, and initially all the squares, the whole system is white. And we are dropping randomly black squares at different points with a concentration P of black squares. So at this concentration, where P is 0.17, we have black squares isolated, and there is just one connected white background. As we increase P when we have 50% black, 50% white, we have something like this. And when we increase the P much further, we have here a black connected system and scattered white islands in it, or lakes or whatever you call it. Now, this is quite different from the normal percolation, where we look for just when the connected path appears, which connects, say, the upper and lower boundaries. That will come somewhere between these two. And this is equally applicable for a system with a circular boundary. For the circular boundary, the question of percolation is not so relevant, but we can still think of this island to mainland transition. So here we define clusters of black sites or white sites as groups of black or white sites which are connected either by edges or by corners. That means we are considering nearest neighbors as well as second neighbors to be connected if they are of the same color. And we borrow this topological concept of the Euler number and define the Euler number chi as the difference between number of black clusters and the number of white clusters. Now, if we plot the number of black clusters and white clusters against P, the fraction of black sites, then this is what we get. Now, this is a configuration average over several configurations, 100 are taken here. So, this number of the white clusters, initially it is 1, and it stays 1 for some time, and then it will rise. And the number of black clusters rises, reaches a peak, and then falls, and ultimately goes to 1. And if we take the difference of these two, this is the Euler number. The Euler number is plotted against P here, and we find that it reaches a peak at this concentration, which we call PC1, and it crosses the x-axis with a slight inflection and reaches a minimum again at this point PC2. And we suggest that this maximum PC1, this corresponds to our first transition, the island to mixed phase transition. And this corresponds to the other transition, which is the mainland to the the mixed phase to the mainland and lake configuration. So we have these two transition points. Now we try to look for the characteristics which one usually sees in phase transitions. That is, we define an order parameter as something which is 0 in one phase and non-zero in the other phase. And we define that as the number of white clusters minus 1, because that is initially it is 0, and at the first transition it becomes non-zero. And if we define a reduced P, as is usually done in transitions, P minus PC by PC, and if we plot this in a log-log plot, then we find that there is a power law variation with exponent 0.72. And another interesting characteristic is the slope of the curve, the Euler number versus P, which reaches a maximum. The inverse of that slope, that blows up at the transition point. So it is shown here. And again, if we take the log-log plot of the variation near the transition point, then we have, again, some power law type of behavior with these exponents, minus 1.02 and minus 1.87. It is asymmetric about the peak. The exponents are slightly different. But for the minimum also, we shall have exactly similar numbers from the symmetry of the problem. Now, why did we get interested in this problem? Actually, from two different experiments, we found something which led us to this problem. And one experiment is the evaporation of a droplet with gelatin and salt. Now, when it dries, something very interesting is observed, that the salt forms crystals, and there are two types of crystal growth processes. I'll show it here. This is what we see when the droplet dries. We initially, these rectangular or cubic large crystals of millimeter order size here, they look like this. And at one point, we find a fine dendritic growth appearing between these large crystals. This is shown here. Now, there is a video on YouTube. There's no time to show it here. Now, the transition between these 2 points, these two growth processes, is what interested us, and we were trying to simulate this. Now, in the simulation, the problem was that where to switch on the second type of growth process. And the simulation was done like this. This is the gel, and we assume that evaporation is occurring. So the white points which are appearing here, these are the voids being created. And when these voids join up here and form a continuous background, that is when we expect the second process to start. And this simulation, we found that the experimental results are matched quite well. I'll show the curve for the Euler number, and we suggested that the minimum of Euler number is what will trigger the second type of growth process starting. So if the Euler number is plotted here, it is just like what I showed previously. It reaches a minimum, it reaches a maximum, then a minimum, and then rises up again. And these are the different simulation results. And at the minimum, where the voids get completely connected, this is where we switched on the second process. And this matched quite well with the experimental results. So this is one set of experiments, and the other is this one. We had cracks forming in a clay layer, and as the thickness of the clay layer changes, the number of cracks changes and their connectivity changes. So let us see what happens here. These are the cracks forming, and here you see the cracks are isolated, and here they have just started to get connected, but not fully connected. Here you have a fully connected crack network, and it stays connected. The Euler number comes like this. It rises, falls, and again rises. And this is the point. There is no simulation here. It is all experiment. This is the point exactly where we find that the crack network is fully connected, and the Euler number is here minimum. So that is about all, and we find that the Euler number does seem to be significant in this transition sequence that we suggest. I don't know if it is a really new transition, but we didn't find this sort of thing in earlier literature. So that is all. Thank you.
Questions? So, like you showed one system, I guess if you increase the system size, you still get the same curve. That's right, is it? Like you showed 50 cross 50.
Yes, the system size was varied.
When you increase, it doesn't change, like with system size. It converges. Okay. So it's, I guess it's not really phase transition, right? It's just some crossover kind. It's not a phase transition.
I mean, what should we look for to say that it is a phase transition?
I mean, there's no like system size as you, I mean, there's no divergence, any quantity which diverges at that point.
The quantity diverges is that the Euler number, the slope of the Euler number.
Yeah, but then it's even happens for a finite system. Like there's no, like it doesn't happen in the thermodynamic limit.
We increase the system size somewhat, and we plan to increase it further, but it takes a lot of time. So I don't know. But for the sizes which we have already tried, we found similar results, different sizes.
Does it become sharper with system size?
Sharper. The divergence? No, we haven't seen that yet.
Any more question?
In the standard percolation, you look for, suppose you have two electrodes on two sides, and just when one path connects the two, you say that is a percolation threshold. You do not look at the rest of the system. But that will happen later. Here we are looking for the point where the background system is just breaking up from one connected cluster into more than one. So percolation will come after this transition. Percolation actually was determined. It came out to be 0.39 here because we include second neighbors also.